Ray at Westwood Media for being in the office in the middle of the storm. We have to have, there has to be somebody present at Westwood Media Center in order for them to record. So Gray, once again, thank you. So let me start off by reading my introduction, which is pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. On June 16, 2022, then Governor Baker signed into law an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of the emergency. This act includes an extension until March 31st, 2023 of the remote meeting provisions of its March 12, 2020 executive order. This meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with that authorization. So with that, I'm calling the meeting to order and once again grant permission to Westwood Media Center to live stream and videotape and ask if anybody else wants to record the meeting. Okay, and with that, I would like to welcome primarily the FinCom members. This is a public meeting, not a public hearing, so we will not have any presenters, although it is my understanding that a lot of individuals will be watching our meeting tonight. So with that, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do the roll call. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. All right, Victoria, would you be kind enough to do the roll call?
Bill Bruce.
He still may be
John?
checking into a hotel, yes.
Here.
Jim. Lauren.
Here.
Renee.
Here. Here.
Mike.
Here.
George Hertz.
Here,
Caitlyn. George Laham.
Here.
George Maroun.
Here.
Chris.
Here.
Sean.
here.
And Alex.
Here.
Okay, so we have
Jim Ferraro is on as well at this point.
welcome, Jim. So we clearly have a quorum. Just to remind everybody, a quorum for the FinCom is 7 members, and we clearly have more than 7 participating. So I just want to make a few introductory comments tonight. First of all, I think Stephanie McManus, our Director of Finance and Assistant Town Manager, shared with us and the FinCom members the presentation she made to the Select Board last night. And I think you all have the slides, but the only things I want to point out are 2 very, I think, noteworthy items. One, under our fixed costs, under our health insurance budget update, the costs are going to come in $182,000 less than projected, which is very, very good news. And then probably, as all of you know, the preliminary state aid Chapter 70 number is $1,062,000, which is about $750,000 more than we had anticipated. So I think that clearly is very, very good news for both the town and the schools. And if you all have that, and I would suggest when you get a chance, you can go through that. The only other thing I'll point out is our excess levy is now at $200,000. Prior to receiving some of these additional funds, the excess levy was actually at 0. So now it's at $200,000, which is somewhat consistent with previous budgets. So the other comments I want to make is that we are dealing with a new committee structure. And in the past, we've only had 2 committees. We've had a municipal committee and we had a school committee. And this year we've tried something a little different. We obviously have education, public safety, community and economic development, municipal administration, and capital long-term planning. And in my observation, it's been a very open and transparent process with the town and school officials. And I want to specifically thank the department heads and all of their staff who met with us for both our capital and operating budgets. In addition, I really want to give special thanks to Town Manager Chris Coleman and to Director of Finance and Assistant Town Manager Stephanie McManus, along with Superintendent Emily Parks and Director of Finance and Operations Lemajron Baptiste, for all the assistance they provided to FinCom members. And the only other point I'll make before we start is due to a travel delay, we're changing the order a little bit. And Bill Bruce will be making his presentation at the end. So with that, if I can get myself back on Zoom here. There we go. Okay. So with that, do we want to start with capital and long-range financial planning? And by the way, what I would suggest is after each presentation, we can pause for questions from FinCom members. And at the end of all presentations, we'll see if there's any questions from the public. So with that, we will turn it over to our first presenter, which I believe is going to be Vice Chair Chris Poreda.
Thank you, George. Victoria, can you put my slides up? Thank you. So this is the first year that we've had a separate subcommittee for capital and long-range planning. It's worked extremely well. I want to thank my other subcommittee members, Lauren Fitzpatrick and Jim Ferraro, for their assistance and help. We met, go ahead to the next slide. We met with the town administrator and the finance director in February, along with the fire chief, police chief, the head of DPW, and the superintendent of schools and the school finance director. And we went through each of the capital projects that were then being proposed, which actually was a very, very good opportunity for us to focus simply on the town's capital needs and the proposed capital projects for this upcoming fiscal year. It took some of the work off of the other subcommittees so they could focus solely on the operational end of things. And we were also able to compare what was at that time, the select board had just revamped the proposed capital budget from when we first got the budget books back in December. So we could see some of the changes that they'd made in recognition of this tight financial year that we're coming into. So we were able to discuss some of the rationale for combining the capital projects based on funding source, and also talked about some of the individual projects that might raise some issues. In addition, I went back and I looked at the town's capital financial policies to make sure that the proposed capital projects were in line with those financial policies. So briefly, the town has two financial policies. One, to make sure that we spend some money on capital every year to make sure that we have we keep up and maintain our capital assets. But then we also plan for future needs. So all the capital projects, all the additional capital projects have to be fit into that prioritization of, where does that fit in relation to other things that the town needs to do. One of the policies, though, is to identify if we're proposing to borrow, we're going to identify a source of funding for servicing that debt before we put that proposed project on the town meeting warrant. And then an important financial policy is that we don't use free cash for operating purposes. So therefore, that's why you see a lot of free cash used for capital projects. Go ahead and hit the next slide, Victoria. So just overall, if you add up all the warrant articles that involve capital projects, you come to 9 million and some change. That includes some borrowing, as you'll see. But really what you want to do is focus on what they call the base capital articles. And there are generally two, a base municipal capital article and a base school capital article. This year, the total of those two warrant articles, the base capital articles, is 2.3 million and change. That's about 2.3% of the operations budget. That fits well in line with the financial policy of the town. Just out of curiosity, I went back and looked at what the combination was for those two articles last year for fiscal year 23, and it's about the same. But I would point out that it's not, I don't think anyway, a very useful exercise to go compare year over year the capital articles, because capital needs change from year to year, and you might find a big increase in 1 year over the next just because you need to replace a capital article or do a lot of maintenance. So this is just basically out of curiosity. The pie chart demonstrates that obviously the biggest chunk is public safety and the schools. And the other big chunk is the sewer. And as you'll see, the sewer capital articles are taken care of by what we pay the sewer department in our fees. So it's really this public safety capital articles and the school capital articles that we have to worry about paying through other means. There's a small chunk there for the library. And as was explained to us, the library appears separately this year from the general maintenance that would be included in the general maintenance capital article, or the general maintenance project within the base municipal capital article. And the library was separated out simply because there are a number of library-specific one-time projects that are proposed to be done along with all the other maintenance in the library. So the option was to separate out and show that particular thing for the library. That's why that chunk is there. It's not normally there. Next slide, Victoria. If you look at all the warrant articles that involve capital spending, this is what you see. There are 8 of them. And there's the total amounts for each one of those capital articles. As you can see, not all of them involve appropriated funds, like the sewer comes from sewer retained earnings, the ambulance receipts, and there's an additional capital article that we're going to fund through the meal and hotel tax. But the base municipal capital and the base school capital articles will be funded through free cash. Next slide, Victoria. I don't intend to go through each one of these. If you do have a question on one of them, point it out, ask it at the end of my presentation. If Lauren or Jim or I remember what was said about that, we can answer you. But more importantly, next meeting on the 28th of March, when the budget proposals are formally presented at our hearing, then the town can address that question. Next slide, Victoria. The base school capital article has a couple of interesting things. Roofing, we found out, was an amount that's appropriated, but it's not necessarily spent. The school department is allowed to accumulate that money year over year until the school committee actually approves a project. And specifically with roofing, the school is engaged in an effort to identify amongst the Martha Jones, Downey, and the Thurston Middle School, I think are the 3 schools, that if they're assessing the roofs to find out exactly what repairs need to be done with those 3 schools. And once that study is completed, then they'll let a contract to address those issues. Next slide, Victoria. As you see, the sewer projects are funded by retained earnings, except for the inflow and infiltration program, which is going to be funded through Massachusetts Water Resources loan. Next slide, Victoria. Thank you. And then there are additional capital projects and I'll point out that these may be broken up into different warrant articles. In fact, I know that at least 2 are. So just because they're on one slide that I'm presenting doesn't mean that they're all going to appear in the same warrant article. In fact, I think this slide represents 1, 2, 3, 4 articles all combined together. But for the sense of expediency tonight, I just put them on the same slide. Ambulance, 2 things for the ambulance that comes out of ambulance receipts. We are going to use some meal and hotel tax money. And I note that the network upgrade for the schools, that money, again, that money is going to be held until the new elementary school is finished so that the district-wide network upgrade can be done that can come or address all the buildings in the district. The auditorium project is interesting to note that Westwood High School is 20 years old. As was told to us for several years now, the bond that we sold to finance the Westwood High School is now completed. That 20-year bond is completed. So the auditorium is 20 years old. We know that audio and visual technologies have improved by generations since the place was built. So there are audio and visual issues with the equipment at the auditorium, and they can't fix it or replace it, or they can't fix it because the parts needed are no longer available. And it's like trying to fix your original iPhone going forward. You might as well just get a new iPhone or a new smartphone. So that's why that is there, in case you're wondering. I think that's it, Victoria. I don't have another slide, do I?
Okay, Chris, thank you, and Lauren and Jim, thank you too. Are there any questions from members of the FinCom to either Chris, Lauren, or Jim? I see Mike.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much, Chris and team for that presentation. In my conversations with Emily, I believe that there are 2 categories where the town is allowed to carry over from one year to the next, and that is technology and the roofing. And I just because people are watching from different schools, I believe in my conversation with Emily, it was Sheehan and Martha Jones that are being considered. Those 2 schools. I didn't hear. I may have misunderstood, but I didn't hear Thurston or Downey.
You're absolutely right, Mike. I got them wrong.
That's fine. Okay, I just want there's definitely interested parties from around town that are that like to hear their schools. That's number one. And then I guess the other question I have is when it comes to that technology shift and the roof shift. Were there projects that they described are pending? So again, they're waiting on the assessment for the roof, but I believe the network, the network, and then also the laptop refresh. Were those the ones that were presented to you?
Yeah, the as I recall, and Jim and Lauren, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, that there is an ongoing program to replace Chromebooks amongst the students. So that's part of that. And the other part of it will be the auditorium audio and visual upgrade when that is finally let. I'm not sure that they have a contract out yet, but I know that the network upgrade will wait until the completion of the new elementary school.
Thank you.
Okay, do I see any other questions? All right, thank you. The next report is going to be, actually the slide says municipal subcommittee, but it's basically we're calling our public safety subcommittee. And what we did is that includes the police, fire, and DPW. And the rest of the municipal side will be handled in a separate presentation. So with that, I guess I'm going to turn it over to Alex. My understanding is you are going to take over for Angeila tonight. Is that correct?
That's right, George. Yep.
Okay, Alex, and then we have George Maroun is with him. So Alex, we're in your hands.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. And just wanted to thank George and Angeila for the work to get us here. George and I are going to split this presentation. I'll do the first few slides, and then George, I'll turn it over to you for the last couple. So just sort of a little bit of background. First of all, can everybody see the slides on my screen?
I was just going to ask you to zoom in a little bit.
Okay, is that good?
Thank you.
Yeah,
a little bit more. Yeah, there you go. That's good.
Okay, perfect. So subcommittee assignments, well, that's just sort of broader context for tonight's meeting. But, Angeila, myself, and George served on this public safety committee. So we looked at the fire, the police, and the DPW budgets and met with the respective leaders. So we spent a good chunk of time last week in person at Carby Street with all three leaders and some of their staff members, in addition to Town Administrator Coleman and Stephanie McManus and Molly from Town Hall as well. So really a productive meeting, and we went through budgets sort of, at least the three of us, almost line by line through the budget book just to dig in. And we had several questions for each of the departments. This presentation is really just to serve as a summary piece for the conversations we had with all the department leaders. And I'll be glad to answer any questions, or George and I can answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So just a quick summary at the bottom here. This sort of table at the bottom shows you the three budgets we reviewed. The 23 budget that is in effect now, and then the proposed 24 budget by each of the department heads. The increases are pretty in line with what we're seeing across the town. So range from fire at 2.6% year over year, with police at 4.2%, and then DPW just short of that at 4% increase year over year. Starting with the police department, the overall budget, $5.24 million, again, a 4.2% increase over last year. Most of the budget increases do come from salary, not from expenses, in terms of what comprises that 4.2% increase from prior year. The number of staff remains 46, which is unchanged from FY23 to FY24. So when we look at salary increases year over year, that's promotions, raises, sort of normal things that are both contract based as well as run by the department head, by Chief Silva. Any observations we had, just sort of pulling up the things that we thought were salient to share with the broader group here. Overtime remains sort of a highlight item going year over year. That's fairly consistent. Whenever an officer is injured, calls out sick, there obviously needs to pay overtime to the existing officer base to cover for that shift or those shifts that are necessary. So that's expected, but that's a pretty significant line item on the budget. And there's also a lot of budgetary items that are in line with Chief Silva's approach to run the department. So really focused on policing strategy. So having police, very visible throughout the community, consistently driving around town. I know I personally see them around town quite a bit, as opposed to sort of sitting, in the department or elsewhere. So they're out around town as part of the strategy for more public visibility. Something interesting that George and I, discussed with department head and Chief Silva, were dues and memberships is sort of a line that we see increasing year over year. And unfortunately, that tends to be, software licenses, software technology, computer assets, things like that are purchased by the department. And then year over year, the software vendors tend to increase their sort of annual expenses for these softwares. So we see dues and membership. We actually asked Stephanie if this could be recategorized or sort of renamed in the budget, because it mostly is sort of software and services dues as opposed to more traditional dues and memberships. But unfortunately, we're at the mercy of these software vendors. Once we install the hardware into the police cruisers or at the police station, every year there's licensing fees that go along with that unfortunately grow year over year. Capital budget. So Chris and his team just went through the capital requests. We just summarized it at the bottom of these three slides, just so we can see, in addition to the operating budget, what the capital requests are for this particular department. So for police, it was the police vehicles, safety equipment, and radio telecom infrastructure. All right, moving on to fire. $5.37 million budget, about a 2.5% increase from prior year. Again, in this case, salary increases comprise a majority of the budget increase year over year, just like the police budget. The number of staff also remains the same at 45 from FY23 to FY24. So again, salary increases for things like promotions and general sort of cost of living increases throughout different ranks of the department. The key here, we talked to Chief Deckers about the salary increases and promotions that we're sort of going into or will be going to effect for FY24. And this is really just to ensure that we have the right staff, the right levels of firefighters and officers that are manning each individual crew. So if there's a crew at Islington, there's a crew down in 109, that we have the right tenure and the right sort of seniority of staff that are on a given truck at a given time. So making sure, Chief Deckers is really adamant about making sure that we have the right folks, in addition to a lot of newer members that are throughout the department that are staffing these different shifts that are going out and making calls to the community. So again, we'll see that promotion and increase in staff and salary move into FY24. There's an ongoing project. Fire alarm maintenance costs continue to remain high due to the necessity of replacing the alarm box technology throughout the town. So those red boxes you see in different places. It sounds like it's generally just an aging technology that needs to be replaced. I think I don't know the details as well as Chief Deckers, but as far as I understood, there's technology that's basically becoming obsolete, and so we have to go through and upgrade the technology in those boxes throughout town to make sure it's compliant. Obviously, the system works as intended. And then capital requests, again, these were just presented by Chris and team, but turnout gear, radio upgrade replacement, training equipment, and then the obviously the largest line item is the ladder truck replacement, the borrowing article for that. I will chime in there just to give some color commentary on the ladder truck. It is obviously a pretty substantial line item for the town. As we understand it, as I understand it at least, this particular truck that we are hoping to put into service or hoping to order and put into service shortly thereafter is a truck that is multi-use. So it's sort of between a ladder and an engine. It does have engine capabilities. It does have advanced life support, and it does have maybe a medium-sized ladder. But I think the balance that Chief Deckers is trying to strike here is really how do we provide the same excellent, adequate service without increasing the number of staff required to man each shift. And so I think this ladder truck, or this sort of like multi-function truck, is intended to provide the most flexibility for a crew, as opposed to having to hire additional staff to work the same shift to man an engine crew and a ladder crew. This is sort of a combo vehicle that he's put in the request here. So I do think it makes a lot of sense, and I think Chris and team, you guys can probably speak even more to that if anybody has any questions on it. With that, I'll turn it over to George if you want to take us through Public Works and the summary.
Sure. Thanks, Alex. I don't have too many comments on Public Works. I mean, it's a well-run group. Much appreciation for the effort Todd and his crew put into maintaining the town's assets. One thing I will say, which I was very impressed with and happy to hear, and on behalf of the town, grateful to Todd, the proactive pursuit of grants, I think, provides the town with significant supplemental funds. It's not immaterial. This is, I think, adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And so it's one of those things where if you don't pursue them, you don't research them, and you don't look for them and hunt them out and find them, they don't just come to you. You have to find them. You have to apply for them. Sometimes the applications get rejected. You have to apply again. And the persistence of Todd and crew, I think, stood out to me because it shows their commitment to the town and that they're not just looking at this budget as a gimme. And so I think that was one thing that stood out. Everything else was blocking and tackling. As Alex mentioned, we have the capital requests there as just an FYI. We shouldn't go through them line by line because Chris did a good job summarizing at the capital budget level. And then again, just to iterate, I don't want to be too redundant, but Alex pointed out that salaries are a heavy portion of the budget, and so a lot of the increase was a result of getting salaries up to date with cost of living and so forth. And then finally, just in summary, a few recommendations came out of our discussions. Very productive, open, transparent dialogue, very appreciative of the town administration and the heads of all those departments for being forthcoming. And so Alex talked about this when he discussed the proposed purchase of the fire truck. But what we really appreciate about Chief Decker's approach is that he's looking at his collection of assets as part of his resource strategy, not only the assets themselves, but resources and human capital. And so he's got a very forward-looking approach, and one that I think makes a lot of sense for the town, given the aging infrastructure and his desire to optimize resources going forward. I thought was very thoughtful and deliberate. And I, as a newcomer to this commission, I really appreciated the attention he put there. So appreciate that aspect of it. It's unfortunate, but one of the largest expenses on the fire budget in terms of training was a result of an unfunded mandate that came from the state. And so these things are dealt to the department and they don't have the ability to react or anticipate them in the budget. And these are things we just have to deal with and be cognizant of at the state level. Employment situation in both departments, all three departments appear stable based on our conversations. Conversations with Chief Silva, Chief Deckers. Myself as a resident, I feel comfortable that we have adequate coverage and services are maintained in a manner that's responsible and appears to be appropriate. Let's see. So I think one thing we should all be cognizant of, right, as the commercial sector in our town begins to expand through the continued development of the University Ave area, it undoubtedly puts more demands on services, police and fire, as well as DPW. So we should be cognizant of the fact that while it's a good source of revenue for the town, and it adds commercial livelihood, it doesn't come without a cost. So increases in budgets are an expected outcome there. So that's something that we should be all cognizant of. Finally, a couple of recommendations for perhaps consideration for future engagements with the Finance Commission. I would say one thing that we noticed is that there seemed to be a little bit of discomfort with regard to trying to project what fuel consumption costs were going to be in the future. And people started to refer to, changes in price of fuel is unknown and we want to build a buffer. And I think maybe the town administration could consider a change in that approach where we don't try to estimate what the price of energy sources are going to be in the future. That's a fool's errand. What we should do is just, use today's rate, and then what we should project is our expected usage in terms of volume. And then whatever the change is, it is, and it'll be a variance that the town has to deal with, but we should be prepared to deal with those, whether they're increases or decreases. And so when we put people in a position where it's not their expertise because they're not energy professionals, we shouldn't put them in the position of having to guess what future prices are going to be. And they shouldn't be responsible for having to, find a shortfall in the category of energy costs. So I recommend that to the town, that we just use an approach that takes away the guesswork and just allows variances to be rectified for, as actuals occur. The second recommendation is that given the budget cycle and the fiscal year are not aligned, it leaves us with a gap. And so we're analyzing numbers in March. The books have worked, for the previous period were closed last June. And so we have 9 months of actuals that we could be using to inform the discussion, inform the dialogue, and perhaps inform and shed light on the budget for the upcoming period. So I would recommend that we present to the FinCom actuals to date that can be used to inform the discussion in a little bit more transparent way. That's all I have. Turn it back over to you, George.
Yeah, I'll just say one quick thing.
Sorry,
George. Thanks for the great summary. Two pieces of added context, these recommendations. One, there's an open question that I'm going to follow up with Stephanie on, but we use so much energy at the townwide level, and I think across every budget being reviewed today and throughout the budget season, we're seeing utility costs, whether it's heating energy, natural gas, diesel fuel, gasoline, whatever energy sources the town uses. And I'm just curious if there's a way, if we don't already, somehow sign sort of longer term contracts with energy suppliers so that we're not just buying our gasoline at the mobile station on 109. I'm just making that up. I don't know if we do or don't, but we're not just sort of at the whim of any time gas goes up or down by a quarter. And that way we can sort of project out for budgeting purposes and for, more level costs. I mean, if we're buying so much diesel and we're buying so much, home heating oil or natural gas, I would think we should be able to negotiate with some of these energy suppliers to help us from a budget standpoint, but also help us weather the storms through some of the peaks and valleys we've seen, especially over the last 12, 18 months of energy crisis problems. So there was that. And then, the actual data, I think is really important for this group as we look at budgets and proposed budgets. And I just want to note that we all recognize that there are some budgets that, obviously don't hit, line items that don't accrue costs until certain parts of the year. So, snow and ice being a very good example, right? You don't incur snow and ice budgets in July. So you'd expect that most of those funds would be unused until the winter months. So just note that we are cognizant of actual budgets, maybe not reflecting the lumpiness of budget cycles, but I think it would still be a helpful data point for this crew.
I want to thank both Alex and George. And Alex, I have a suggestion. If you would put a note in writing to Victoria, and we will forward that directly to Stephanie and or Chris to get on the energy issue you're raising. So they can be prepared to address that at our public hearing on the 28th. Okay. Thank you for that observation, and we'll follow up with that. So are there any other, and thank you both for a very, very good presentation. And I know, Mr. Maroun, you were new to this, and my compliments to you on your presentation. Alex, you always rise to the occasion, so thank you too. Now, are there any questions that members of FinCom have for either Alex or George?
I have one, George.
Okay, hold on. Let's go to, can we go back to screen to the gallery view? Who had the question? Was it George?
Laham.
George
ahead.
Laham first.
Yeah.
Yeah, George, I 100% echo the comment about buying energies in the futures. I did that at my where I work, and we're saving about 40%. We hit it right. We got lucky, but I think the town across the board, whether it's not only just the municipal budgets, but the school, if we either lock in on gas, natural gas, or oil, or whatever we use, I think there could be a huge savings, because everything that's shown in the market, energy is just going to keep going up, and it could be a huge savings. My other question, I had brought this up a while back, and by while I mean last summer. When did we, and I'm going to have to ask Mr. Poreda for a little historic on this. When did we do the firehouse in Islington? That was 8 years ago, 6 years ago. Whenever we did that, if you speak to the firemen, they'll tell you that the HVAC, so we did it, we paid for it, we did the bond, and they'll tell you that the HVAC in that building still isn't working. And I think I brought this to your attention, George Hertz, over the summer.
Yeah, George, I've raised that issue. I'll do a follow-up with town administration on that, okay? I mean, sometimes you have to be careful what you hear from individuals in terms of what the other side of the story will be. So let me get the facts for you. I have to be honest with you, it's not unusual in every building we built in town. due to public bidding laws. When we built the library, nobody ever thought a year later we'd be replacing the roof. I mean, the ceiling inside. So look, nobody wants to have these problems. I think the town does its best. I think the Permanent Building Committee, if you watch the work they're doing on the oversight function, especially with the new school, but things pop up. But that is an issue. And let me get a correct answer for us on that, okay? I see that, Mike, you have a question.
Yeah, quick clarification. So again, thanks for the presentation. The recommendations, those are recommendations not to impact the current budget, but recommendations for consideration in future budgets.
Correct.
Great. I just want to make that clear that there's no cloud hanging over the current budget of expectation.
Agree.
Great.
Mr. Poreda, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah, a couple of things that dovetail into the capital projects discussion. First of all, on energy costs, we did talk to or did discuss with the police chief the idea of getting electric vehicles to replace the vehicles that he's trying to replace on an ongoing basis. And he is indeed looking into that. He said electric vehicles were good for administrative purposes, not so useful for patrol for various reasons. But with the increase in the number of charging stations around town, that may change. Obviously, electric vehicles don't work so well with a ladder truck, but the fire department also has a couple of administrative vehicles that may eventually be replaced with electric. Lastly, with the ladder truck itself, let me point out that, yes, we are asking the town for borrowing authority in fiscal year 24. However, there's a 2-year lead time on getting that truck, and the actual borrowing may not occur until the delivery of the truck 2 years from now. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Chris. Just a real quick, we did address the whole electric vehicle fleet with Chief Silva, and he made a lot of sense in his response when he said that police cruisers aren't like your typical vehicle, right? There's lots of electrical systems, and so it's not as easy a decision to deploy electric vehicles in that capacity.
Okay, are there any? I don't see any other questions. One other person I'd like to thank is Angeila. She also worked very with George and Alex on this, and she's dealing with a personal family matter, and I wanted to wish her the best and look forward to her returning and being able to meet with us. All right, so next on the agenda, I think we are going to go with the let me just check my schedule here. We are going to go with municipal administration, which is our other half of the municipal budget. And I think that is going to be in the hands of Mr. George Laham. Correct?
Thank you. Yep. Victoria, if you can call up the PowerPoint, that would be great.
And George, I want to thank Kristina too, but my understanding is she's a bit under the weather and did a lot of work with you, but was not able to participate tonight. So we wish her a speedy recovery, okay?
Yeah, she's pretty sick. She caught pneumonia.
Yeah, I know. I'm just wish her well, okay?
So I'll first off, this was the first time that these 18 budgets have actually been reviewed by the Finance and Warrant Commission in this manner. I'm sure they have been reviewed in the past, but they've really never been followed this track. So there wasn't a clear path for us. It was Kristina and I were kind of feeling our way. And when we met with the department heads, I want to thank them. They were all very helpful. They too did not really know the clear path here. So there weren't any presentations made, but we did go and review them. So we want to thank everybody at Town Hall who were very helpful to us and very transparent. The first slide basically shows the 18 different areas and budgets. And the one typo that I have here, it says select board. It really should be select board and town administration, because that's basically Chris's staff that fall under that category. So That is the one correction I'd like to make to that slide. So these were very much pretty straightforward budgets. You know, operating expenses and payroll was broken out. Victoria, can you go to the second slide? Some of the really key points was a lot of restructuring of staff, a lot of hiring of new positions that took place this year, and a significant amount of, as I said, restructuring. One of the key points that we were excited to see is that the Park and Rec Division decided to hire an inclusive program manager. So basically somebody who'd be ABA trained, and that would help in servicing the children who need additional accommodations. That was something that we were very excited to see. New positions created, an HR director slash assistant town administrator. Not only did this new person come aboard, they also came in, posted and reviewed and filled 40 additional permanent and seasonal positions for the town, which is a fair amount of resumes and things to really look at. They also created a new position of director of human services, which basically oversees council on aging, veterans, youth and family services, the library, and the recreation. So it's really adding a lot of structure to the town. Not saying that there wasn't before, but Chris has very much segmented it so that department heads and additional management will be reporting to him. And the last one was under the town clerk. This past year, we had 3 elections and very successfully using the new centralized voting center. And I think a lot of it seems like this is a huge money saver. And it was also a way to really make the process much more efficient. If you go to the last page, this was some notable or some interesting points. So we all know the municipal budget. It's been discussed already. The proposed is about $23.5 million. The municipal administration makes up more than 27% of it. And the fact that they weren't really, reviewed in detail, it was surprising. And of the, as you can see, of the 6.4 million under municipal town, 83% of it is salaries and wages. And, these budgets are proposing a 6.8% increase from year to year. And a lot of that is new positions created, such as the youth services, human services coordinator and whatnot. But it was a good discussion, and it brought light on a lot of different things at Town Hall that I think a lot of us aren't aware of. I think many of us did not even know there were 18 different departments and managers at Town Hall that had these services.
George, thank you. It is indeed a bit of a learning process, and I think you've been part of that. The other thing that George and Kristina have done, they produced a 6-page, much more detailed written report. And I will ask Victoria to get that out to you. So I think George's presentation was a bit of an overview, but they have done a very detailed report backing up this information. So thank you, George, and my thanks to Kristina. So with that, let me open it up to any questions from FinCom members. Okay, George, obviously you've good job. And I think, Victoria, I don't know if you have distributed the 6-page report to FinCom members, but when you get a chance, send that around, because I think
Victoria, I'm going to send an updated one. As I said, Kristina was going to make the presentation tonight as she got sick and she was traveling. It came at the last minute. So Victoria, I'm going to send you the updated one in the next few minutes.
Okay, and then we'll distribute that to all FinCom members, okay? And actually, it may give you some good ideas in terms of the write-ups we're going to publish in the FinCom book. George, thank you so very much, and Kristina, speedy recovery to you. So next we go to, let's see, what are we up to? Community and economic development. So who do we have presenting community and economic development?
George, that's going to be me on behalf of Caitlyn and myself. I'll be presenting the subcommittee overview, the Department of Community and Economic Development. Hopefully everybody can see the first slide here.
John, thank you so very much. We put you to work right away, okay?
It's my pleasure. So as you can see, the department is responsible for a wide swath of very important responsibilities within the town. I'm not going to read them to you, but I'll make a couple of notes. Here, the zoning and licensing function is now been combined into one, and you'll see it reflected that way in the budget book. And I thought it was also noteworthy that economic development is a division within. So the Community and Economic Development Department is directly responsible for the administration and the coordination of all the land use matters, along with the oversight of the individual division. That was a noteworthy point. Now, if you look in the budget book, you'll find that each division is budgeted separately with their own goals and their own performance measures, and they are broken out between expenses and salaries, which is something that you will see me touch on a little bit later in the presentation. Special thank you to Nora and the team. They were very helpful and met with us on the 8th of March to go over the budget and also an overview of the department, and really helped to do a great job of educating us as to what it is that the department does and what the budget is comprised of. So here you'll see some key prior year accomplishments and some ongoing projects for the Department of Community and Economic Development. I tried to call out a little something from each of the various divisions within. I think the origins of these accomplishments will be fairly obvious, but a lot around development, whether it be the continuing redevelopment in Islington, the University Station project, municipal planning implementation, work on affordable housing, online permitting, down on through some work against wetlands, the new Mumford adoption, which you'll see in the ongoing projects as well. Lots of zoning board applications were supported, processed, and heard, along with building permits, which are certainly on the uptick as things continue to be quite prosperous and vigorous here in town, including 30 permits for new homes, which I thought was quite fascinating. It's a combination of brand new bottom-up builds and some new homes that replace existing structures. And then the distribution of 5,000 COVID kits, which is certainly helpful to town residents. And then revising the hazard mitigation plan. Some ongoing projects of note, the Mumford redevelopment of the Foster Block property, which was new to me, and I would not know that term, but that's the Everett Street project. Westwood Glen is doing some expansion work that the department is working on currently, along with obviously the Hamlin and Deerfield project that we're all quite familiar with. Towards the tail end of some work at the Homes at 45, which is the former Westwood Lodge property. There's some development work on Hedgerow Lane, along with the implementation of the comprehensive plan, housing production plan, some regular updates to rules and regulations, along with some proposed bylaw amendment warrant articles. From a budget standpoint, so here we have the budget laid out by the different divisions within. You'll see the zoning and the licensing combined. The current budget proposal from the Department of Community and Economic Development calls for just a 2.7% increase to a budget from what appears to be a very well-run department. It is comprised almost entirely, 94% of the salaries of existing employees. The expenses are fairly minimal within all of the divisions and call for no material increases other than $7,000 increase within building for some professional services around weights and measures. So I thought that the budget proposal was well put together and pretty straightforward for this department. Obviously, two big critical divisions within that take up the majority of the budget, being health and building. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them, but that's the presentation that we have for you this evening.
John, thank you so very, very much. Let me turn it over to members of the FinCom to see if there are any questions. I do not see anything. The one comment I will make is under Nora, it's amazing the breadth and depth of her responsibility and the amount of work that this department, her group achieves, especially without a town planner, which I'm hopeful she will be able to fill that position relatively soon. So if that's any other, John, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. And with that, let me see if Bill Bruce is available. He is.
I'm here.
Are you in your nice, warm and cozy hotel?
Yeah, live from Western New York.
Western New York. Okay. thank you for joining. And as you requested, we accommodated your presentation
Thank you.
on the school budget or education until this point in time. So it's all yours.
Thank you. Just wanted, Victoria, could you move Emily to panelist in case we have specific questions that we might need her assistance with?
Yes, I can definitely do that.
So this is going to be a whole team effort here as we walk through education. A lot's going on this year. I'm going to kind of walk through the process and just an overview of what's gone on. And then each of my fellow committee members are going to walk through different pieces of the proposed school budget. But just to remind everyone, just in terms of how the process works relative to the school budget, in a normal year, the school department puts together a budget and then submits it to the school committee, and they hold school committee hearings. They present to the Finance and Warrant Commission, to us, which Emily did back in January. Then our subcommittee meets with Emily and her team to review the budget, ask questions, go into the details. And then the school committee typically votes. And in our case this year, the school committee voted last week on March 9th, a little later than usual, which we'll go into in a second. And now today, we're presenting to you. So let's just talk through a little bit about this process because it's been very different this year. Oh, I'm missing a slide. There we go. So there's a lot of challenges relative to the school budget this year. When Emily spoke to us last, she highlighted some of them, but we have increased transportation costs, utility costs, unanticipated special education tuitions, as well as the contract negotiations, which we've now worked through. So this year there's been 3 kind of iterations of the budget. So I thought I'd just kind of highlight. So back in January, they proposed a 4.5% increase to the school budget, and the net staffing change was a reduction of 1.5 FTEs. There was an increase in user fees for families, so for some of the various sports programs and such to help support some of the budget, as well as a use of a one-time grant around the IDEA that we would kind of pull forward to use this year. Then and it's important to note, in January, we didn't know, we had an estimate of what the state funding would be relative to Chapter 70, but we didn't know what it was yet. Then in February, at that school committee meeting, kept with the 4.5% increase, but based on the discussions around teacher contracts and stuff and where the budgets were, they had to propose a net staffing reduction of a little over 8.5 FTEs. And that's really the big change from January to February. And then a lot happened on February 16th that really changed the course of how things landed this year. We were estimated to receive a certain amount of funds when we looked at it back in January. And then when the actual funds came in, when the state budget was released, they were much higher than we had anticipated and much higher than anything historically that we had seen. So due to that fortunate additional Chapter 70 funds, the school department received an additional $641K in funds. And what that did is it enabled Emily and team to compensate the teachers, come to agreement, which was ratified and approved last week at the school committee meeting, and restore back the job, cuts that had been proposed in the February meeting. So again, very abnormal to our typical year. In the last, I think, 4 or 5 years I've been on the committee, we've never quite seen something like this. And I think if you go back, it's 10, 12 years or more back when we actually saw something like this. So at the committee meeting last week, due to these additional funds, the school committee or the education proposed a 8.8% increase. And what this did is it went back to the original where we were able to not cut any of the roles that were outlined in February and fund an additional 1.2 FTEs relative to an adjustment counselor, still increased the user fees. That was part of the overall view of things, as ours were out of line with other districts. But I think the big message out of all this is, due to that grant money, we're really able to get back to, where we want to be from a staffing perspective. And really we're able to, support additional increase for the teachers as part of that. So I'll hand it over to Mike to kind of walk through the overall budget, and the team will walk through everything, and then everyone's kind of free to ask us questions after that.
Sounds great. So just kind of picking up what where Bill left off, the overall increase is a 5.2% increase year over year. That incremental change is 2.319339. So just over $2.3 million. I'll get into the salaries in a second, but this I'm not going to read all of these lines, but significant headwinds on pretty much every front. And it's been a journey with the leadership of Emily and her team, and the want to give the best services to the town has always been evident. So we're this chapter 70 was the Hail Mary. We weren't expecting it, and it really allowed us to come in where we all wanted to be. So if you go to the next slide, on the kind of the highlights, the salary, very similar to some of the other groups that have presented the different budgets. Salaries represent over 85% of the school budget, and that is no different this year. The contractual obligations provide the largest driving factor. So when there's a increase in the scale, it's across the board. And so, we're very happy with the ratified agreement with the teachers and the other groups. And that is reflective of the 5.2% increase. The net reduction of 2.25 FTE professional staff is part of this budget, with a net increase of 1 FTE in support staff. And then we're transferring 1 non-salary role into a salary FTE. The net of that is a reduction of 0.25, again, which is even better than the January numbers that we were working with. So if you go to the next slide, we'll get into the salary increases. Again, the overall budget for the school is $51,762,397. The increase in salaries was $2.3 million, and this is the breakdown of those roles. So while there were adds, there were also some reductions that were made. And again, if you go to the next slide, the net of all of this is a 0.25 reduction in FTEs. We really worked hard with Emily and team around the decisions that were made in what are you retracting and what are you adding. And we felt that all of the decisions were made in a very thorough way. If you follow the school committee meetings, it's been an inclusive process with the town, and a real focus on the elementary schools and trying to maintain the highest level of teacher to student ratio possible. And Westwood is in a phenomenal place across the board. So if we go to the next slide here. I will just one quick thing I wanted to say. The increase in salaries, if you're following the percentages of 5.2% increase, the increase in salaries, it's a negotiated 3% raise this year, 3% raise next year, and then a 2.5% raise in the first half of the third year, and then a 0.5% in the second half. That actually, it's across the whole scale. And, this is not an increase right out of the gate of 5.2%. So that is a contractual agreement with the teachers union. And then the second thing, and Maya made a great point at the school committee meeting last week, the increase in the budget going from 4.5% to 5.8%, that is not an increase to the taxpayers. That is the Chapter 70 funding that is coming. Chapter 70 funding that is coming through. So we are not seeing an increase. Prop 2.5 is still very much in place, and we're not going to see an increased bill as a result of this increase. Rennie, over to you on special education.
Sure, thanks, Mike. There we go. So, special education is very expensive. Obviously, everything's really expensive these days. But we're very proud. Westwood's very proud that we educate more than 99% of the kids at our schools. Less than 1% of the kids are set out of district. And those kids have real complex needs. So we're very proud as a town that we're able to handle 99%. That's quite a number to be able to pull that off in one guy's humble opinion. But looking forward to 24, we want to try to continue to keep the current programming and service levels and meet all our responsibilities, obviously, and to continue to provide a really robust ESY program. ESY is tied to it's called expanded school year, and it's tied to students' IEPs so they don't regress their skills. So many kids not many, but some kids with IEPs definitely have ESY services over the summer. And to be able to expand our peer program was another something that Emily and staff really wanted. They've been trying to promote that for the past 3 years. It's an elementary program for students with autism. And I believe we have one program now, and this would increase it to 2 programs. And it's students with autism in the elementary level. Well, as you can see, everything has gone up. Out of district tuitions are very, very expensive. I believe Mike or Bill had mentioned it earlier, that I believe 4 students moved into Westwood with IEPs that had out of district placements. So it's Westwood's responsibility, obviously, to pay for those students that have out of district IEPs. And the cost was considerable. And as you can see, tuitions are up from 23 to 24, everything is up. And if you look at the second half of the slide as well, transportation to get kids to and from these out of district placements, and also to just get the kids from town, from school to school. Many of the students, again, in IEPs have transportation services. So the town obviously has to pay for those students to get to school wherever their certain program is located throughout the town. Let's see. So, Bill, help me with this one.
Yeah, I think we just wanted to kind of highlight, you saw the increases on the prior page, and, what's accounting for, the 808 increase right here. And it's really driven by that private special education tuition. Typically that goes up 2 to 3%, but it went up 14% this year.
Bill, sorry to interrupt you, Bill. That was the number that Emily said that was shocking to her, correct? That it was up 14%, that Emily specifically said in all of her career that it varies between 2 to 3%, and then an increase of 14%. I remember now, Bill, was shocking to her. I believe she used the word shocking. It is quite an increase that the state passed down to the towns.
Yeah, and that had quite an impact on us, as you can kind of see over here. It's quite a bit of that budget. And then, Sean, do you want to just cover capital briefly, and then we can?
Yes, of course. So, yeah, I think Chris and the capital subcommittee showed some of these numbers as well, and that perhaps may be more in their lane, but I'm happy to speak to any of this. Our understanding is that the schools have been able to operate within a pretty constant capital budget, at least for these sort of base articles over the last 4 or 5 years. So the request is the same, just with some changes in allocation within the article based on the needs that the school has identified. For instance, I think they have allotted some more tech funds or kind of constant tech funds this year to continue to support a summer network upgrade at all the school buildings. And that will coincide with the launch of the Deerfield Hanlon School. And I think also, as Chris and the Capital Subcommittee spoke to, there is a routine kind of refresh of multiple grades, Chromebooks, and some teacher laptops as well. I think perhaps the one sort of, maybe the two unusual or abnormal line items to mention this year might be the copiers and the vehicles. So on the copiers front, I think this is something that every few years the schools have aging copier machines that have printed something in the vicinity of 1.5 to 2 million copies, and they've identified this as the year that they'd like to replace some of those aging machines. And then on the vehicles front, I believe those are targeted towards replacing a 2006 Ford E350 truck used by facilities maintenance, and then the purchase of a tractor to maintain the Deerfield Hanlon grounds. So those are maybe some of the shifts in the allocation this year, but happy to answer questions on this or defer any questions on this to those with more knowledge than me.
Okay, so I want to thank Bill, Renee, Sean, and Mike for your presentation and all the meetings you've done. With that, let me open it up to any questions. And Chris, will you be the person who will check the hands? I see you've started off by raising your hand first.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to follow up on what was said about the school capital. And we noted in our discussions when we met with Emily and Lemma that from the original proposals last October until we met with them, the school really got out their sharp pencils, and they actually reduced their capital proposals by $500,000. So they are well aware of the tight budget times, and I think that $1,017,000 is in line with, like it was said, it was in line with what the schools have done in other years. Jim, you want to add to that?
Yeah, just a few questions. Thank you, gentlemen. It was very informative. But regarding the Chapter 7 money, was that, or is that due to an anomaly in the state budget, or due to increased in revenues from like gaming and marijuana sales? Can we expect increased funding in the future?
So I'll probably let Emily add more, but it's a very complicated formula that plays into it. And there's a number of things that factor into it. We can't pinpoint one thing relative to it, just driving up, but certainly things like MECO involvement, as well as a number of other factors play into that. But I'll kind of let Emily speak a little more to it. She might have a little more detail.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I will say we were thrilled to see that our preliminary Chapter 70 estimate is up as high as it is. It really is, a historically high allocation for us. It is a per pupil formula. And so undoubtedly some of the increase is probably due to the fact that we did expand our elementary MECO program. And in addition to the grant funding, of course, the per pupil allocation for Chapter 70 does follow the students from Boston to Westwood. But I think the majority of it is really related to a piece of legislation that was passed in 2019 called the Student Opportunity Act. And it was a historic piece of legislation regarding education reform. And there are funding targets that are supposed to be taking place. I think the end game is in FY28, if I recall. And so when Governor Healy released her proposed budget, she really referenced the state's commitment to hit those targeted increases in Chapter 70. So I think we're seeing that realized.
Okay, and then in your original presentation, part of your budget included borrowing from the future. Is that no longer on the table? Did this close that gap?
It did, yeah,
That's great.
and that's a really wonderful piece of the news. So with that additional $641,000 in state aid, we're able to restore the cuts, settle our contracts, and we were able to plug sort of two deficits that we had in the FY24 budget. One was the $200,000 one-time IDEA grant, which is fantastic. We had used that originally as an offset to pay for instructional assistant salaries in FY24. Now we're using Chapter 70 to pay for those salaries, which is a much more appropriate way to go. That enables us to use that one-time special ed money to close the fiscal year this year, where we've had those unexpected tuitions. So that's great news. And the second piece was the ESSER 3 grant. So we had ESSER is federal COVID relief, again, one-time funding. And we had taken that grant funding to hire 1.2 FTE elementary adjustment counselors this year. And we're using the other half of that money to pay for those positions again in FY24. Now, again, we're able to fund those positions using that Chapter 70 money and, use the ESSER one-time fund, again, for appropriate one-time costs. So we've applied that in the Curriculum Instruction Cost Center, paying for things like our social studies textbook adoption and subscriptions, online subscriptions, that kind of thing. So to your point, Jim, it's great news. It means that we'll be in a much more solid foundation going into FY25 without having to sort of fill those structural deficits that we were just kind of, planning for in a pinch. So this is much better. And frankly, the fact that we don't have those structural deficits going into FY24 also enabled us to do what needed to be done to settle the teacher's contract as well.
Great.
Yeah.
It went all the way around. Thank you.
Oh, sure was. Thanks.
Jim, that was an excellent question. Thank you. We've done all the reports, and I just want to thank everybody, all the subcommittee members, and basically everybody on FinCom took a role and responsibility in participating in these subcommittees. And I think either at our March 28th meeting, I would like to get some feedback from FinCom members, letting me know what you thought of it. What did you think of the committee structure? What are the rooms for improvement we can make? But I want to thank you all so very much for a lot of work that you put in. With that, the only other thing, I may turn to Chris, who will lead us a little bit of a discussion about our article write-ups. Chris, do you want to sort of lean into that a little bit?
I guess I'll have to. Yeah, so much of the first couple of articles are pretty much, especially if the votes go the way they have in the past, then these will be pretty much pro forma write-ups. But we'll have to see how the vote goes in 2 weeks to see whether or not we have any controversial write-ups and going to do any differing opinions and that kind of thing at George's discretion. So think about if there's a particular article that falls into your subcommittee, think about taking the role and doing the short write-up for the town meeting book. That's what we're talking about for new members, is that the town meeting book that gets handed out to everybody who attends town meeting has a little bit of a, the process in town meeting is that the FinCom's recommendation is the motion on the floor. So the town meeting book will describe what our recommendation is, whether it's that the town vote to approve what the warrant article seeks, or that the FinCom votes for indefinite postponement. So think about that. Is that what you needed, George?
Yes, Chris, that's good. So on the 28th, we're going to parcel out assignment. We'll be looking for volunteers. And we don't really have a lot of time between that Tuesday night meeting. We have to have our write-ups finished by that Friday because Chris Poreda, myself, and Victoria have to work over the weekend to get everything edited, finalized, and off to the printer. It's just one of the obligations we have to make sure that we get the book in front of voters at least well in advance of town meeting. So I'm going to be looking for a lot of your support on that. Before I move on to starting to close the meeting and approving the minutes, any other questions any member has about anything that went on tonight or anything about your concern or issues with our public hearing that's coming up on the 28th, which, by the way, that tends to be our longest meeting of the year. And it's one where we go through a full deliberation of each article. We make a decision whether we're going to have if there needs to be a minority report on any particular article. But I think the town residents are looking for us to explain the basis of our votes. So one of the things I'm going to request, you can vote however you feel on a particular warrant article, but we should give us a sense of the basis of your vote. Okay. With that, I think what I will ask Victoria to do is, or can I get a motion?
Hey, George.
Yes.
Can I just ask a question first?
Yes.
Can we, I think we have a mostly finalized list of potential warrant articles. Between now and the 28th, can we decide who's going to do which one rather than waiting till the 28th? And we can
That's
maybe do
not
that
a
through
bad
email?
idea. Let me ask you this. If you will look at the warrant articles, would you send into Victoria which ones you're willing to take on? Okay, so those will knock off fairly easy. And I like Chris's suggestion. If there are those that are related specifically to what you did on the subcommittee, you should really grab those articles, okay? But yes, that's a very, very good suggestion, Bill, and we should do that. But please get a note into Victoria, letting her know. Victoria, maybe what you can do is you can sound out just a simple list of what the warrant articles are. And we can ask FinCom members, and look, to be honest with you, let's see if we can get all the articles assigned, maybe even before the 28th. Very, very good suggestion.
Yeah, Victoria, I think there's been some slight amendments to that list since the last time we saw them. So go back to Stephanie and Chris and see if you can get an updated list.
It's a simple, it'll be a simple list, but Bill, that's an excellent suggestion. Okay. I like that a lot. All
George,
right. Yes.
George, on that note, are we done with the placeholders?
Yes, I think you'll see that they eliminated all of them but one at last night's Jim, at last night's select board meeting. I think there's only one placeholder left. And I think we will follow, your advice in previous meetings. We don't want to be surprised if they are going to fill that place, or that they need us to give us some information, in my opinion, clearly before the 28th. Okay. The other interesting thing is Article 1 this year is 0. I haven't seen that in years. Article 1 and 2, this year, Article 1 is a 0. No funding requested. So I'll volunteer to write that one up. Okay.
Assuming that if we vote to approve it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Hang on, George, one other thing.
Yes, sir.
And before we do that, I don't know if we're at new business or not.
We can be at new business right now. Let's see. Yeah, go to new business. Fine.
I just wanted to highlight to everybody, you probably got an email from Dottie Powers. There's a new ethics training that the State Ethics Commission has put out. And everybody's required to do that online training. Takes about an hour, unfortunately. I wouldn't recommend this, but I found out when I did it this afternoon that you don't actually need to do the training in order to do the certification.
Wait a minute, Chris.
I never said that.
You've never said that. No,
I
go
never
through
said
it.
that, and I don't recommend
You
it.
got to certify and sign off. You've done the training. No, look, I've done it every year. I think you have to do it every other year. So please go ahead and do it. And you did not hear what Chris just said. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our March 1st meeting?
Quick
Motion
question.
to approve minutes.
Can I get a second? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mike.
Sorry, quick question on this. I was remote. I dialed in. I just want to make sure that I'm able to vote on these minutes.
Yes, I think you are. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
I will move that you are. All right. So did I get a second?
Second.
Okay. I think we have to do a roll call on this, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Victoria, go ahead and do it.
Bill,
Please.
Yes.
John,
Abstain.
Jim,
Yes.
Lauren,
yes,
Renee,
Abstain.
Mike,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Caitlyn,
yes,
George Laham,
yes,
George Maroun,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and Alex.
Yes.
Okay, so the next thing we need to do is see if there are any questions from the public and press. And Chris, I really would like you to monitor this, if we get any hands raised. And if anybody has a question, please give us your name and address, and we will attempt to answer your question.
So there is one from Fran Fusco, 20 Pine Lane. She asks, why is the percent of the fire department budget significantly less for next year compared to DPW and police? Actually, fire department has the smallest percent of increase. And why at this point do they still have placeholders? Well, I guess we answered that question already. So anybody from the Public Safety Subcommittee want to take on that?
Yeah, I can answer that question. I mean, the budget was put forward to the Finance Commission from the department head. So Chief Deckers and his team put together the budget. So this was not something that we can articulate. I mean, they passed a budget forward that, you know, the increase was more moderate compared to DPW and police, but we aren't the authors of that budget or the people who propose it. So I don't think we're in a position to answer this percentage increase compared to compared to police or DPW. George, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you're right. You stated it absolutely right. I mean, I think it's my understanding is they're fully staffed. The positions are funded. I think there are, as I remember from last night's select board meeting, there is some additional funding going in, or it's been requested by the chief and the fire department for 4 promotions. So I think you alluded in your report to the fact that the chief wants to make sure that he has proper supervisory staff at each station when our crews go out. And I think the select board, I believe, has supported that increase. So beyond that, I think your statement is the best answer we can give. Chris, do you see anything else?
Yes, there's another question from Kathy Sullivan, 283 Farm Lane. She writes, according to the recommendation from a study done several years ago, the Westwood Fire Department is not currently fully staffed. It appears that the 2023 operational study will recommend an enhanced staffing model. It was stated at the Monday Select Board meeting, 3/13, that the results of the 2023 operational study will be available in a week or so. Is there funding in the FY24 budget to implement these long overdue increases to Westwood Fire Department staffing? And I would just caution that we probably don't want to get into a specific staffing issue, since I don't know whether or not the fire department's contract is settled.
Let me answer it this way. I think there's 2 studies going on there, and this was also at the select board meeting last night. There is both an operational and a facilities feasibility study that's undergoing now for the analyzing the main fire station. And I think the town is being very proactive. They're just not looking at building a new building. They're looking at what are the demands on the fire department going to be over the next 5, 10, 15 years? What's going to change? So I think those reports, though, are not going to be available really until, for months. Okay, so it does not really impact the FY24 budget at this point in time. My guess is at the earliest, it might impact the FY25 budget. But those reports, the facility study is being done, an operational review is being done, and I think the town's taking the right approach.
There does not appear to be any other questions, George.
Okay. All right. Well, I see also that we had a lot of participants tonight, which makes me very happy. And hopefully we've provided a lot of information for the residents. I also want to thank, I know I did it at the beginning, but we've had tremendous support. And I think it's been a very transparent relationship between us, the department heads, the town leaders, the town administrators, and the school folks too. So once again, I really want to thank everybody for the support they give us as we meet our obligations for town residents at town meeting. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Victoria, we had a second. Would you take the roll call, please?
Bill,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
Caitlyn,
Yes.
George Laham,
Yes.
George Maroun,
George Maroun.
Yes.
Okay.
Chris,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and Alex.
Yes.
Okay, everybody be safe and well, and I will see you all at the 28th in person, and look forward to everybody signing up for article write-ups. So be safe and well, okay?
Have a good night, all.
Night.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.